Well, the original Bruce the shark had googly eyes, and then they had to edit that one out.
I know why it's named Bruce. That's his lawyer's name.
Is it really?
Yeah, Bruce was Spielberg's lawyer's name. So they named the shark, I think, because it was so problematic. I believe that's the origin story of why they called the shark Bruce.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, and this is the podcast for you, I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me is my co-host, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week, we take a look back in time to decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, or want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get our respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share it with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV. We'll review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, Lovecraft Country, and Watchmen. Find all that information and past episodes at shatpod.com/TV. And finally, to hang out with us live, follow and subscribe to our YouTube channel for Shat the Movies, where we play video games, host watch parties, and edit this podcast live. All that being said, Big D, what movie are you reviewing today?
Gene, tonight's film is a very special one for me, and it's for our great listener, Tracy C. So I'm going to set the mood for you. Let's go back to the summer of 1975. You know, we're living in the big city and there's just violence and people getting killed. So what do we want to do? We want a relaxing weekend with the kids. So we're going to go out to New England, find a nice sleepy island town where we can just read almanacs, drink all day, hook up with our wives, ignore the kids, let them get tetanus. And that can mean only one thing, Gene. We are heading out to the wonderful little town of Amity, and we're going to get attacked by a great white shark. And that's why I'm very excited tonight. We're going to review the 1975 Spielberg classic, Jaws.
And this one is a massive film, so thank you so much, Tracy, for commissioning it. And hey, guys, I've been listening to your reviews for a long time and really appreciate all the work you do. So I jump around a lot when I listen to your podcast and recently decided I wanted to hear your thoughts on the classic movie, Jaws. I searched and searched, but to my amazement, discovered you haven't covered it. I look forward to hearing your thoughts today. So here are my memories of Jaws. In the summer of 1975, the movie Jaws was all everyone was talking about. All my friends had seen it, but because I was 9 years old and it was rated R, my parents wouldn't let me see it. Rightfully so. So I struck this deal with my parents that if I was a good boy, stayed out of trouble, wasn't easy, and did all my chores for a month, my father would take me to see it. I saw it in July 1975 on the big screen, scared the shit out of me. I would barely get into the bathtub. Thanks and keep up the good work, Tracy C. So, Tracy, I think the reason why you didn't see it in our list of movies is because it's from 1975. So this is even before my childhood. It's really stretching the envelope. For movies like Jaws, movies like Alien, we can't help ourselves but say yes.
And Gene, you're right. This is only our seventh 1970 film. They have to be special. We did Westworld to tie into the TV show, Halloween, Alien, Smokey and the Bandit, The Muppet Movie, and the other 1975 classic Rocky Horror Picture Show. So this is a very special film, very special time frame. And I think we do have some other 1970s coming up. So you got to check our schedule on the website and see what it'll be.
Well, Jaws is a 1975 shark thriller directed by Steven Spielberg, based on the 1974 novel by Peter Benchley. It stars Roy Scheider of Blue Thunder fame as Police Chief Martin Brody, who, with the help of a marine biologist, played by Richard Dreyfuss, and a professional shark hunter, played by Robert Shaw, hunts a man-eating great white shark that attacks beachgoers at a summer resort town. Shot mostly on location at Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts, Jaws was the first major motion picture to be shot on the ocean and had a troubled production, going over budget and over schedule. Universal Pictures' release of the film to over 450 screens was an exceptionally wide release for a major studio picture at the time, and it was accompanied by an extensive marketing campaign that heavily emphasized TV spots and tie-in merchandise. The prototypical summer blockbuster, Jaws won several awards for its music and editing and was pivotal in establishing the modern Hollywood business model, which pursues high box office returns from action and adventure films with simple, high-concept premises released during the summer in thousands of theaters and advertised heavily. Jaws was followed by 3 sequels, none of which involved Steven Spielberg. So, Big D, we always ask what your memories are of the movie we're covering. We heard Tracy's memories. How about yours?
So I just did some math, and this makes me feel very old. So this came out in 75. That is 48 years ago. That's as if we were in 1980 watching a film about 1933. So you got to get that into your head. This is a long time ago in a different world, and we're going to discuss parenting in the 70s. And this movie fits into that perfectly as an example, because I vividly remember sitting in the movie theater watching this film, and where the head comes out of the hole, I almost peed myself in the theater. I screamed. I put my head down. My parents were with me. This was a family film. And I started doing the math for this podcast as well. And I said, okay, it couldn't have been the main release, because at that point when this came out, I was only 2. So I'm like, this must have been an 80s re-release. Let me go check. Maybe it was the 10th anniversary. Maybe it was the 15th anniversary. Hell no. This came out in 1979. They re-released it. I was 6 years old. And there is no reason I should have been in this theater. And I told my parents, I said, how did you take me to see Jaws? Oh, that's not true. You were not 6 years old. I said, yes, I was. I remember going to the Mamaroneck Playhouse 4. We went to Woolworth's after the movie. And she goes, oh, well, maybe we did. And that would explain why to this day I do not like to swim in like bodies of water where I cannot see the bottom, touch the bottom. If like there's any kind of algae or growth and it hits my feet, I freak out. So this stuff, it does stick with you, and it stuck with me to this day.
You tell me you're not an Islander?
No, I won't go. Like I'll go in the shallows, and I know that's where most shark attacks happen. But in the back of my mind, I still think there's something out there, and it's because of this movie.
So, this is the difference between the upstate New Yorkers and the true city boys like me. But Big D, I missed Jaws. I missed Jaws 2. They both came out before I was born. I only got started on Jaws 3D, and I thought that was just Jaws. I thought that was Jaws, and I had seen it. I watched it while vacationing at my cousin's house in California, and that was enough to scare the shit out of me. I did not want to swim in the ocean for years. Now, part of that's living in Arizona, but even here, like you said, rivers, lakes, the swimming pool, I didn't want to go near any of that. That was from Jaws 3D. I didn't realize until this watch for Tracy that I'd actually never seen the original Jaws in its entirety, and I'm so glad we did.
So today, just to test out the waters before we recorded, I went onto Twitter and put up a question. I said, hey, we're reviewing Jaws tonight. What age do you think is appropriate to let kids see it? And it ranged from people saying, hey, I was 5 when I saw it. I turned out all right. No, actually, I'm not all right. Or people who said they showed their kids at 10. I think 10 might be the age. Where do you fall on this?
I mean, I don't know a thing about kids. It's the very concept of it is just in our social fabric now. This movie came out and suddenly everybody thought they were going to be the victim of a shark attack.
Yeah, that's why I'm not showing Emma. I'm convinced she will not go in the water. She knows animals can eat people, but to actually see it on screen, I think would affect her. And Vanessa likes the beach as a Brazilian. So I'm going to keep her away from it until she's much older.
I mean, down there, you got to be more worried about gators.
Very, very true.
In Florida, man.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's set sail and hit the trailer.
There is a creature alive today who has survived millions of years of evolution without change, without passion, and without logic. It lives to kill. A mindless eating machine. It will attack and devour anything. It is as if God created the devil and gave him jaws. This is Universal's extraordinary motion picture version of Peter Benchley's best-selling novel, Jaws.
I just found out that a girl got killed here last week. And you knew it. You knew there was a shark out there. You knew it was dangerous. But you let people go swimming anyway.
Did you see that?
It's all psychological. You yell barracuda. Everybody says, huh? What? You yell shark. We've got a panic on our hands on the 4th of July.
Is it true that most people get attacked by sharks in 3 feet of water, about 10 feet from the beach?
Yeah. What we are dealing with here is a perfect engine, an eating machine.
We're not only going to have to close the beach, we're going to have to hire somebody to kill the shark.
Bad fish. But I'll catch him and kill him.
Did you hear your father? Out of the water now!
This shark, swallow you whole. You're gonna need a bigger boat.
That's a 20-footer.
25. 3 tons on them.
Hurry up, he's coming straight for us. Don't screw it up now. Don't wait for me. Now! Shoot! What's the tail? Give him room! I can't, he's trying to run! Oh! Quick! I can't hold it! Hurry! Break it up! Brody!
None of man's fantasies of evil can compare with the reality of Jaws. Roy Scheider, Robert Shaw, Richard Dreyfuss, Jaws. See it before you go swimming.
In the beach town of Amity Island, Chrissy Watkins goes skinny dipping and is pulled underwater. The next day, her partial remains are found on shore and blamed on a shark attack. Police Chief Martin Brody decides to close the beaches, but Mayor Larry Vaughn persuades him to reconsider. Chrissy's death is blamed on a boating accident, and Brody relents until the shark kills young Alex Kintner in front of a crowded beach. So before we get started on the movie itself, I just want to talk about how you should watch this. Now, we've talked on the podcast before about watching things on YouTube or pirated versions. And for the most part, a lot of the movies that we watch weren't that great to look at to begin with, and you can really watch them on any device. If you've seen Jaws before, but not in ultra high definition, I beg you to rewatch it and spring for the ultra high definition version on an ultra high definition screen. This movie in the UHD version looks incredible. Even darker scenes like the beach party at the beginning or the attack on Chrissy Watkins, they're crystal clear, which made for some prime boob spotting during her demise. You can see during the beach scenes like beads of sweat on the beachgoers' faces, the loud prints on Mayor Vaughn's outfits, the ripples in the water as the camera is panning across. Like, this movie is an absolute feast for the eyes. And I know it's cliche to say that about Steven Spielberg, but really every single shot is gorgeous.
Before I get the ultra high def version of this, I need to get an ultra high def TV. So I'm hoping maybe a lightning strike or something will kill our Vizio, because right now my 1080p, my probably like 7 years old, but I can imagine it.
Big D, I feel like this is a legitimate use of the Shat funds. Like the Bank of Shat.
Oh my God,
the commission's coming in. You need to buy yourself a big, beautiful, high def TV for the listeners. It's for the listeners. It's not for you. It's a service.
You like, there was that little boy inside my head that was like, could I? Oh, could I, Daddy? That would be wonderful.
Your little mermaid clitoris turned
Yes.
bright orange.
My little mermaid vagina, like it smiled. But you're so right, and you're not burying the lead on this. It's Spielberg. His shots are beautiful. There's multiple times on my HD version, my normal one, that I had to stop and just watch. It's moments where they're taking advantage of the ocean, the sunset, whether it's two people just standing there talking to each other. It is beautiful. I wanted a printed piece of art or something to put on my computer wallpaper. The movie is beautiful to see. It was the first film to gross over 100 million at the box office. It was the highest grossing film of all time until Star Wars beat it 2 years later when it was released. And it's recognized as the first summer blockbuster. This was something you had to get in line. People were waiting for it. People were talking about it. And somehow it was a family film. I know I went to it, the re-release 3 years later, but people took their families to it. And I'm like, how did this get a PG rating by the MPAA? It's Spielberg. Maybe he schmoozed them a bit. And he famously got his first film, which was Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, was the PG-13, the first film to ever get it. So he always knew to push it. But there's full frontal nudity. This was the first vagina I saw. I know it was dark. There is insane graphic violence. They don't hide the shark attacks when they show it. There's bloody legs. There's arms, half-eaten torsos. There's a fountain of blood that's shot out of a child's body and a bloody raft. There's half-eaten human torsos. The photos in the almanac alone that Brody is reading, that would get this an R rating today.
They're also such a great example of how smart the filmmakers were, because it's a genius way to show some pretty gnarly mutilations without blowing the budget on special effects. Instead of trying to make a living person look like they've got some sort of a massive wound, just use real photos of what a shark can do. And then just let our imaginations apply that to the shark that really at this point in the movie we haven't even seen. Watching Chrissy Watkins get whipped around in the water, that was far more exciting than the attack on Quint later in the movie where we actually see the shark. And it's because we're building up in our minds what's going on below the surface.
It's much scarier. And I don't know how parents didn't just walk out of the theater. And I think it's because parents back in the 70s, and I don't want to be that old guy talking about, oh, back in the day, we were tough. And no, I just think parents were different. Parents didn't give a shit. And this movie put 70s parenting on display. Brody and his wife, they wake up like maybe 10 a.m. They have no clue where the kids are. The kids are out in front of the house somewhere, and they're like, oh, maybe they're up front. They're playing on a rusty swing set that cuts them repeatedly. This is something that happens all the time. The kids come in bloody and hurt. Then shocking, Gene. There is a shark attack. There's a teenager killed, you just mentioned. And, you're sitting there with your wife, and you're like, hey, let's get drunk. Let's fool around. Where are your kids? They're sitting on the dock about probably 500 yards away on the same body of water. Your other kid is in his boat. The 5-year-old Sean is sitting there. And after the second kid gets attacked and eaten in front of everyone, and everyone's running out there because your son Michael is in shock, does anybody ask, where's Sean? Where's Sean? No, you just see Sean left alone, sitting on the beach crying. These are not the helicopter parents of today. And I'm shocked that we survived.
The crazy part about this is Brody didn't read about this death in the paper or something. He saw Chrissy's body. He saw the body and was still like, eh. And these half-assed, performatory safety measures reminded me so much of my own childhood. My mom, she wouldn't let me go play football at the park because that was far from the house, right? No. Play in the street in front of the house. And kids literally got hit by cars on our street. But my mom was like, no, the park has kidnappers. And apparently those kidnappers want fat Persian kids who never fucking shut up. So they're just prowling around the park looking for me. In this movie, a shark literally ate people. And the parent's solution was, okay, well, obviously don't go play in the ocean. Just go over there to that adjacent estuary that has ocean access. You'll be perfectly safe.
Yeah, they said go use it in the lake. And I'm thinking, oh, okay. Yeah, it's a body of water that's secluded. It's not connected. That is the ocean. It's connected. There's a path there. And you look at all the other adults. So the mayors there and the politicians, they know somebody's been eaten. They take their own kids into the water. They are willingly sacrificing them.
When the family's sitting on the beach and nobody's swimming, it's like, hey, go get in the water. And they're just terrified. But take the kids. You got to take the kids.
Yeah, it's all for the show. You got to show everybody that you're confident and that there's no shark out there, and you get them out there, but they're willing to sacrifice their kids. And I think it's a different world because everybody in here doesn't seem to know much about sharks. Today, we're spoiled because we have the internet, you have Discovery Shark Week. So everybody thinks they're like a shark expert. Maybe it's because of Jaws and the TV that we watch. Here, Brody's got to do some research. He's got to get on the phone, get an expert to come down, or bust out the family set of almanacs. They don't even know what a great white is. Somebody says, great what? A great white? And I don't know. And I think it's brilliant the way that they build this world. Because you got Brody, he's coming in from the city. He was a city cop. He had to get away from the violence. He doesn't like to go on boats. So you start to think maybe he's overreacting. This has never happened in the town before. This is a natural thing. Don't overreact. It's the economy of the town. You're going to hurt people. So he starts to question it. And I think that's when the audience also starts to question it. Maybe he's overreacting. We haven't seen anything. That first murder is in the dark. The only one who's seen the bodies are two deputies and the kid who got drunk and didn't get laid. So you're starting to think, okay, maybe it's not going to be that bad. Then bloody carnage just jumps right out. The second that you think nothing's going to happen, it's daylight, it's a beautiful day, there is a fountain of blood. And you see Brody sitting there, he's scanning the beaches, and you're thinking it can't be anything. And then there's this cool parallax effect that zooms in on him each time somebody passes. It takes you from one emotional extreme to the other, and it's so fast how the violence comes.
I want to know what happened to Pippet the dog. I was most concerned with Pippet. So we see Pippet going out there fetching a stick, and then we see the stick floating in the water, but the movie really never shows us blood or a dog's body or an attack on a dog. And they're killing kids left and right. Like you said, Big D, fountains of blood. So I can't imagine showing a dog's death was a step too far. What the fuck happened to Pippet?
Well, again, it was to lure us in. We saw the stick floating. So we knew, oh, Peppa, he must be somewhere. I expected him to be what scared some of the people out there. I don't remember what I thought of that, but people must have been just mouths aghast in shock at what they were seeing.
Well, a shark bounty sparks an amateur hunting frenzy, and local professional shark fisherman Quint offers his services for $10,000. Oceanographer Matt Hooper examines Chrissy's remains, confirming that an abnormally large shark killed her. When local fishermen catch a tiger shark, the mayor proclaims the beach is safe. Hooper doubts that the tiger shark is responsible for the attacks, and his suspicions are confirmed when no human remains are found inside the tiger shark's stomach after dissection.
So I already mentioned that I think the movie takes you from feeling secure and safe into realizing that you're just vulnerable and there's horror in front of you. I think the movie also does a great job of balancing the tone of the movie between like humor and horror. Besides feeling safe and then scared, the movie goes back and forth. The locals, you get those knuckleheads joking about catching the shark. All the idiots are loading into the boats with dynamite. It's chaos. It is absolute redneck city, people coming in from out of town. Nobody knows what they're doing. You got Hooper saying, yeah, they're not going to make it out of here. And then immediately you get Alex Kittner's mother coming out there in all black. She's come from the funeral and she slaps Brody. And the music does this as well. The John Williams score, iconic, Academy Award winning. You know, it creates suspension. But at the same time, I was shocked that he went to this like optimistic, like whimsical score, right? When they're out at sea, you hear like la 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 la, like they're going on an adventure. When they shoot the barrels, again, we get the uplifting. It's like a bubbly score, and you're instinctively feeling, oh, they're gonna catch them. Fuck no, that's when the terror begins.
I loved the use of comedy in this movie. All the jokes are jokes that could be made among old men at a greasy spoon in a small town, Michigan. The kind of place like they still sell cigarettes alongside mugs and 100% cotton t-shirts. There's no like kid jokes in this, right? This is old man jokes. When we first meet Quint, he's chomping on chips. He's got like a little guy following him around. It's fucking hilarious. I'm laughing at this guy, but he's not doing anything specifically to be funny. And you got a million questions in your head. Where did he get the potato chips? There's no bag next to him. Why is he eating them right there during a very serious meeting? Why does he need $10,000 exactly? Who scratches their nails on a chalkboard? Everyone making this movie knew they were doing something funny, knew they were doing something entertaining, but they're never laughing at their own jokes. And that's the best kind of humor. And that's something I didn't expect from this movie. What I did expect is the one thing everybody talks about when they talk about Jaws. Whenever we see a movie failing to nail the special effects, right? When they just go a little too hard, for me, it's Titanic. Somebody on the podcast brings up Jaws, usually you. And basically, it's to say that Jaws is the pinnacle of implied horror, of letting the viewer's imagination run wild. Show us a little less, and it does a lot more. Spielberg took a lot of inspiration from Hitchcock, and it really works in this movie. The prime example is the tiger shark dissection. This might be my favorite scene in the entire movie. I swear I could feel the shark's guts when Richard Dreyfuss is, pantomiming like he's pulling stuff out of it. I could smell that corpse. And we get like a license plate, again, funny, fish and other contents of the shark's gut, but we don't actually see a cut open shark at all. It might as well have been a table.
No, but it was very dark and scary. I remember as a kid, I felt uneasy because it was quiet. And I think they also, besides the music, there's a lot of times where there's nothing going on and you keep expecting something to jump out. And I don't know that we can give Spielberg all the credit because this production was problematic, to say the least. Spielberg has come out and said it was one of his least favorite. They were over budget. They went, I think, twice the shooting days they'd intended to. They filmed out actually on the water. Can you imagine trying to set up the rigs for just alone when the orca sinks? How do you keep people safe? It was a nightmare. They had 2 mechanical sharks, which cost them millions, a majority of their budget. They lost one of them. It was a nightmare. So him hiding things, I feel like it was almost a mistake. He wanted the shark to be visible, but when you did, you could see it was just a laughable metal skeleton with some like fake shark skin on it shaking. And I don't think he deserves all the credit.
I don't think he deserves all the credit. I think he deserves some credit. So one, he definitely has an eye for it. And that's just something you can't take away from Steven Spielberg. But the other part is once you have the problems, you could have a disaster of a movie like Flash Gordon, or you could have something that works because you find a way around your technical limitations. And you see later in the movie, you're absolutely right, Big D. When he does have the opportunity to use the mechanical shark, he does. He would have had that shark's ass all over the screen if it wasn't for the technical issues. This is not a matter of taste. It's a matter of necessity.
I almost wish we could see the original cut, like with the laughable shark. You could see like the rope. You could see like the fish. And it works maybe because the shark has like dead eyes. Maybe that made it look better. But it would just be kind of shuddering and act scared. It would not have been the same film.
So we've talked about Steven Spielberg. We've talked about Brody. We've talked about Quint. We should talk about Hooper because Hooper was the big surprise of the movie for me. Like many children of the 80s, my first real encounter with Richard Dreyfuss was in the 90s with movies like What About Bob and Mr. Holland's Opus. And he was already in his 40s at that time. I didn't know there was such a thing as a young Richard Dreyfuss. And that Richard Dreyfuss that we see in Mr. Holland's Opus, he's nothing like the 28-year-old Richard Dreyfuss we see in Jaws. I am convinced after seeing this movie that Matt Hooper was the blueprint for Brooklyn hipsters. Like you look at hipsters, it's this guy, the glasses, the beard, the beanie, the backpack, and that desire to look working class, to present like a blue collar bona fide. It's all right there.
Yeah, I know how to make knots. Oh, yeah, I've been on a schooner. I've gone out there. Look at my eel bite. He's trying so hard to act like he's hardcore. But everybody in town, when they see him, like, hey, kid, come over here, you young fella. Get out of the picture. He does not look young.
He's 28 years old. Every other guy in this movie is fucking 40 years old and looks 50.
No, I bet you if we went back and checked there that these people, they look a bit older, but he does not look like some clean-faced, kid. Make him look like he's in college, but there is an animosity between Quint and Hooper that sets the tone for the film. Maybe it's Hooper's got money and Quint is this old school surly guy, but on the set, because you know that Richard Dreyfuss is renowned for being difficult on set and people don't like him. The two of them hated each other on set. And I think that added to the performance because when they're in the same scene, you can feel that they actually hate each other.
That's so weird because I really enjoyed the sort of budding friendship between Hooper and Quint. Yeah, like they started off a bit adversarial, but you can see he's kind of bringing him along, that back and forth. I felt like they bonded in the movie, and I fully expect them to be like oil and water the whole time.
Yeah, okay. Maybe at the end they did bond over scars and maybe started to tolerate him a little bit, but he's only got two choices at that point. You got the town sheriff or him, and he does a good sheepshank, so they have that in common.
Searching the night waters, Hooper and Brody find a half-sunken vessel. Hooper removes a great white shark's tooth from the boat's hull, but he accidentally drops it after discovering local fisherman Ben Gardner's corpse. Vaughn still refuses to close the beaches, allowing only increased safety precautions. Following a juvenile prank with a fake shark, the real shark enters a nearby lagoon, killing a boater and causing Brody's oldest son, Michael, to go into shock. Brody then convinces a guilt-ridden Vaughn to immediately hire Quint. Quint, Hooper, and Brody set out on Quint's boat to hunt the shark. When the shark suddenly appears behind the boat, Quint harpoons it with a line attached to a flotation barrel, but it pulls the barrel underwater and disappears. So, Big D, we've been doing this podcast a long time, and I like to think I can smell a jump scare coming a mile away. I am here to confess, Jaws got me. When Ben Gardner's corpse pops out of the hole in the boat, like you mentioned earlier in the podcast, I dropped my drink. Yeah. I gasped. But I got to ask, what was his body doing there? Why the shark didn't eat him? Like, he looked like a juicy fellow. The boat wasn't going anywhere. It was the middle of the night. Why didn't the shark eat him?
Well, because the shark likes to play with them. They've made it clear, hey, I'm going to drag the barrels away. I'm going to pretend like I'm running. Then I'm going to turn around. I'm going to chase the boat. This is a funny shark.
You're going to be on the dock? I'm going to take the dock. Then I'm going to come back at you with the dock.
Yeah, I'm going to take your wife's pot roast. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take it. I'm going to let you live. And then you have to explain to your wife why I took dinner.
Comedy.
But you can feel the DNA. This is the blueprint for slasher films of the 80s, the future. It opens up. You feel like it's Friday the 13th. We get the kids partying by the campfire. The two kids go off to have sex on the beach. And then there's the unseen killer. You get to see it from their perspective. And I think this movie does the jump scares much better. And they do it because you're not expecting it. Friday the 13th, we've become accustomed to it because okay, when it gets in close up on them, something is going to jump up behind them. Here, they lull us into feeling secure. We're safe. Nothing's going to happen. Oh, fake. Oh, there's a shark. It's two kids. Oh, okay, you're right. Whew. There's no way they would kill a kid. Oh, yes, they would kill a kid. And the key to getting it to work is to make us truly not expect it and feel safe when it comes. Movies today don't do it the same way.
And while helping to establish that blueprint for slasher films, Jaws also plays with that in the opposite. So we know how slasher films work. The victims split up always. They always put themselves in weird situations, and then they give the killer opportunity, right? So we see that at the beginning of this movie, right? Chrissy, she's at a bachelorette party. She decides to just get naked and go swimming, right? Invites a guy along too, but of course he's going to get drunk and pass out. And the final element is they got to give us an entertaining death, which we got with her being whipped around or, with fountains of blood, as you said. Jaws changed the game, though, by letting us know there was a killer in the water, but then not letting us know who it was going to kill. And that was really cool. So we're on the beach, as you said, broad daylight. We know at this point in the movie what attracts the shark, right? Vibrations in the water, splashing. And we see fucking everyone doing it. There's like 50 people in the water, all splashing. You got old lady in a floaty. You got the kids, you got the dog, and then they flash back to the beach and then back to the water, and you're starting to get a little bit nervous. You can feel Brody's tension as he's trying to convince himself everything is fine because Vaughn said everything is fine. But we're all on the edge of our seats because we know there's a shark in the water, and we're just trying to figure out who's going to die. And honestly, if you would have asked me to put money on it, I would have guessed wrong.
No, I would have guessed either the fat lady or the old guy like swimming laps.
No.
Those two. The kid was on the bottom of my list. There's no way. It's daylight. And also in the slasher films, like you said, they go off on their own. They break up. They go off into a secluded part. So we're also expecting this is a large, it's 4th of July weekend. There's no way. They have to keep, whether it's a mystery of a shark attack or a boat propeller, you got to keep building on that. They just rip the Band-Aid off real quick. And no, it's a shark.
Yeah, and what's cool about that is they don't use this shark silently killing on its own out of sight to make people question whether it actually exists. Instead, they're using kind of like the greed, or like the town itself, right, is in denial about what they're seeing right in front of themselves, which is really creative. At nightfall, while Quint and Hooper exchange stories about their scars, the shark rams the boat and disables the power. In the morning, Brody attempts to call the Coast Guard, but Quint smashes the radio. After a long chase, he harpoons the shark and ties it to the boat, but the shark drags the boat backward, swamping the deck and flooding the engine compartment. Quint heads toward shore to draw the shark into shallower waters, but he overtaxes the damaged engine, and it fails.
So lately, I've become a bit of a complainer when it comes to movies with overdoing the exposition. They tell us everything that's going on, the details of what they're afraid that anyone in the audience is going to be like, hey, what were they doing? What is that machine? What does that button do? Why is he wearing that helmet? And this movie does no hand holding. Through the whole movie, I'm astounded how they fail to explain details that I guarantee most of the audience didn't know what a great white was. So when they're on the boat and they're out there hunting, there was no dialogue to explain what are the tactics they're using, what's a piece of equipment. I was totally expecting to be like, hey, let's go chum the water. Oh, it's important that you get blood and fish in there so the shark can smell it from 7 miles away.
Who's the Englishman on board?
That's my grizzled voice.
Oh, okay.
What are those barrels there for? I expected them to say, okay, those are the barrels. We're going to shoot into them, and then it makes it difficult for them to get away. And this is true for most of the film. That like when he's sitting there and he gets into the harness and he puts his fishing pole. Again, I've watched Discovery Channel. I know about punching sharks. I know that's to hold him in place as he battles with the shark and his piano wire on his fishing rod to come in. But they don't tell us any of that. With one shocking exception, they give the ending away to this movie halfway through. They tell us everything that we need to know. They flat out tell us how it's going to end. Hooper says, these tanks will explode. And then later on, Quint says, what are you going to do with that tank? Make them eat it? That's exactly what he does. He makes them eat it and then it explodes.
Much like great novels, Jaws opens itself up to a lot of interpretation. Like while I was watching this, I found myself having some really late 90s Gene in a coffee shop thoughts. Like, is this movie actually about whiteness and the coastal elite's willingness to sacrifice even their own lives to avoid embracing change? And like, this movie is just as much about human greed as it is about a killer shark. And that's not even getting into like Quint's parallels to Captain Ahab. There was a lot to think about. I mean, you can write college essays about Jaws, and you can't do that about other movies that spell everything out for you and tell you what everything represents.
Well, Gene, I joined at the coffee shop. I mean, I think this is about modern technology, and it's about people losing track of their history and the way things used to be, and traditionalism. I think you're crazy. You can read into almost anything. This is about a shark, but this movie does not get enough credit for developing the characters. I talked about Brody. Did we get a full backstory? He was a city cop. There's a point there where they're showing off scars. He lifts up his shirt. I'm pretty convinced he got shot. And that's why, maybe this is my fanfic, that's why he left the city to go to this small town where he doesn't like to swim to take this job because he needed a change. But you get Quint, right? He is the archetype of the grizzled sea captain. He's got that weathered appearance. He's got that tough demeanor. He is seasoned. He's the experienced fisherman. He is the only man in town who possesses the knowledge to get this predator out of the ocean. And from the moment we meet him, the town gives him the respect. They get out of his way. Nobody laughs at him. He looks like a raving madman, but they know he's the only guy who can save us. And Quint, yeah, he's nuts. And his methods are different. He talks about like the instincts and he tries to get into their head and understand the behavior of the sharks. He does not want any modern technology. And we could easily just dismiss him. He's a kook. He's a nut. But the movie has taken the time to develop him. There is something back there that's driving his obsession. It's his experience on the USS Indianapolis. That's why he's so obsessed. That's why he's fanatical. And when he does crazy shit like break the radio, dooming them, normally we would expect, oh, nobody would do that. Why would he ever do that? But that one story and building his character up, Yeah, it makes sense. I understand. It's somewhat reasonable why he did it.
And typically when we're watching a movie like this, we could dismiss that story scene as like filler, right? All the guys are just on the boat. They're talking. It's nighttime. And I started to think that, man, the movie's kind of dragging a little bit. And then I felt like I was being disrespectful to the film. Like I felt like I almost needed to show some reverence for this tale, which is a testament to how well it was delivered. And I thought they were going to make Quint some sort of like a heartless hunter, that he was just purely negative force. But this guy's incredibly fun. He's got songs, he's got stories, he likes to play pranks, and he's opening up this little world on his boat to all of us, to the point where he becomes a sympathetic character and you don't want to see him die. Now, normally in a movie, this is the guy who smashed the radio, right? He sabotaged the ship. He blew up the engine because he refused to listen to anybody else. He refused to compromise and put everyone in danger. In most movies, particularly of like the 80s and 90s, is he's going to be that flat kind of character who just is unexplained evil. And in this case, no, he's a very well-rounded guy.
And we're going to get 8 minutes of Hooper and Brody being like, you killed us. What are you doing? How could you do that? But they understand it. And I think it's important that they're coming together as a group. I agree with you. They're starting to bond. They're getting each other's respect. They're laughing. They're bonding because we almost have hope. You think at this point, oh, they're going to get them. Maybe they can win. The movie keeps making us feel confident that there could be a positive outcome. That Jaws has no chance against our team of intrepid like fishermen. They're going to get them. They're going to get them, but it doesn't happen.
As the ship slowly sinks, Hooper enters the water in a shark-proof cage, intending to lethally inject the shark with a hypodermic spear. The shark attacks the cage, causing Hooper to drop the spear and escape to the seabed. The shark breaks free and leaps onto the boat, devouring Quint. Trapped on the sinking vessel, Brody shoves a pressurized scuba tank into the shark's mouth and shoots the tank with Quint's rifle, killing the shark with the resulting explosion. Hooper resurfaces and paddles back to Amity Island with Brody, clinging to the remaining barrels. I understand that the flotation barrels in this movie were there to build suspense and present, like you said, Big D, Quint's practical, old school way to kill a shark. And they were cool. Like they looked cool. They were cool to watch. They're a legendary device in a film. And I get that we needed the hypodermic spear to set up the shark cage scene, which also was very cool. I'm glad that that was in the movie as well. It's critical to Jaws' legendary status as a film. But the thing that kills the shark is just shooting a scuba tank that for some reason the shark decided to hold in its mouth for 10 fucking minutes. I got to point out, these guys were just really bad at shark killing.
But
like it comes down to that.
Gene, this is not a normal shark. This is not a normal shark. We know that Quint is the expert. I truly got scared as somebody watching the film, and you realize shit's gone wrong when they ask him, hey, have you ever seen one take 3 barrels down? And he says, no. At this point, that's when the hypodermic needle comes up. All things are out the window. This is not a normal shark.
Hey, some of those fucking dickheads that barely survived leaving the bay, somehow they had the right idea with some explosives. Rig some explosives to the harpoon. Use a net. Have you guys heard of a net? Bring, 3 elephant guns.
Also, Hooper, keep the damn spear in the cage. Why are you hanging outside the cage with it?
I went kayaking with the King Bee one time and lost a paddle. And since then, I always make sure to tether my paddle. Why? Because I got butterfingers. Hooper is like the king of butterfingers.
I know I've talked about Mythbusters before, but they tested this myth?
The 3 barrels?
No, not the 3 barrels. No, that's not possible.
The hypodermic spear?
No, whether or not a can of compressed air would explode if it was shot. They went back and replicated the scene. They had Adam Savage in a water tank with a sinking ship on his side, same rifle, shooting at the tanks. Sadly, people, it would not explode.
Did you feel bad for the shark?
No, it's hard. Like normally, if this was a normal film where the shark was out there minding his own business, but when you start chewing up kids, that's when I'm like, hey, I got to get on board with that.
Perhaps I'd feel differently if like a shark ate my child or my big tittied friend. But I was kind of surprised nobody cared about the shark's welfare. Like normally in a movie today, you would have somebody who's out there, protesting or on board the ship saying we can't kill the shark. And yes, Hooper trying to protect the shark would have been a serious Hollywood trope. But let's be honest, like this poor shark was just trying to eat.
No.
The shark would have left if they stopped feeding it. Instead, you've got this majestic creature, perhaps the only one of its kind in the world, gets its head blown off because people at Amity couldn't take a week off from swimming.
No, I think this shark was a dick. This shark had an agenda. This shark was going after kids. He was like you said, why does he go by Mikey? He had Mikey. Mikey could be a snack. He's already eaten the guy in the little boat, the guy helped teaching them sail. Mikey's there. The only reason he could let Mikey live is he thought in his little shark mind, I'm going to leave this kid traumatized and scarred for the rest of his life. If I eat him now, he dies. It's over. I can torment him for years to come. This is a psychological shark, Gene. It is.
Okay, all right. And it represents Richard Nixon.
Maybe. But the sad thing is how this movie, it was a big hit and people didn't know about sharks. And it left people with a negative stereotype of sharks. Everybody thought that sharks were going to kill you. My fear of sharks was born here. That's not what sharks actually do, people. And in recent years, thankfully, people have gone back, realized that sharks generally, like you said, Gene, normal sharks who don't have an agenda, those sharks are going to leave you alone. But the sharks who have a point to prove, they're going to come in and eat you. And there's actually a term for it now. It's called the Jaws effect, to where after this movie, when people were hearing the music, they were thinking of the shots, the relentless attacks, the bloods, people started to actually not go swimming. Public beaches saw a decline in people coming. People really had a fear of it, and people developed a fear and a hatred of sharks and of the water. And it was called the Jaws syndrome or Jaws effect.
I mean, maybe I shouldn't talk about my fear of the ocean like in past tense, because all I do now as an adult is I talk myself into it, right? I'm still that kid. I'm still that kid that thinks the shark's going to eat me, but I go, hey, it's much more likely you're going to die in a motorcycle accident. The chances of a shark attacking you today are very, very slim. There are people who are on this beach every day and nothing happens to them. You're on this beach once every 5 years, you're going to be okay. Because when you think about it, this sort of fear makes absolute sense. Like, we literally put ourselves in huge bodies of water that can hide massive creatures. And what's the payoff? Like, what is the fucking payoff of going to the ocean? I'm wet. Now I'm wet.
No, and I'm dealing with this personally now. My cousin is coming to visit for the first time, and I haven't seen her in like 25 years. And she wants to go to this town in central, like Florida, Itchituckney, I think it's called. And she's like, hey, there's a lazy river. We could go down there. And we look it up. This is right north of Gainesville, the Gators, right? This is Gator territory. So Vanessa's like, I don't know that I feel comfortable about like a lazy river. There's a lot of still water out there. I live knowing that there's most likely an alligator in any body of water. They're everywhere around here. And my cousin's like, oh, I've looked it up online. It's fine. Oh, it's fine. And I'm like, but is it really? I'm like, no. So Vanessa's like, we're not putting Emma out there. What if it's a chance that she's the 1 in 1,000? You can't undo that ever. This movie, like as a kid watching this, it traumatized me because of like what I mentioned in Halloween, that when kids see kids being the victim and the ones attacked, it traumatizes you in a special way. And people always romanticize, and we do it. I've done it in this movie review where we talk about how we grew up. Oh, the 80s were the best. We were unsupervised. It was great. We had freedom. Yes, I agree. It was great. But we have to admit there's some drawbacks that maybe some parenting would have helped us. The freedom was great. But going to see this film, it traumatized me, and I still kind of hate the water. So a little parenting, not helicopter parenting now, but the 70s plus maybe 10%.
Now's the time of the podcast where we give our Shat score. The Shat score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie would take to get off your respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It is a cold can of Narin Gasset on the deck of your own Orca. And 5 wipes is an absolute disaster movie. It is being an ichthyologist cursed with the inability to hold objects when you're startled underwater. Big D, we'll start with you. What is your wipe score for Jaws?
So, Gene, going off of what people said on Twitter, this won't be a very popular score for me, but damn it, I'm going to go with my heart. I think it's a 0 wipe. I think it is perfect. As the first summer blockbuster, this delivers. Jaws is gripping. It's suspenseful. It redefined the horror genre. I think Spielberg's effective plot and the dialogue, keeping it down. Everything was moving. It was fast paced. This movie was gritty. I thought it felt real. And that's because everything was shot on scene. It was on the ocean. It was set actually there on the island. The only set that they built was Quint's hut, his little building. Everything else was there. The practical effects. Yeah, the sharks didn't work, but that turned out to be a great problem to have. I thought the performances were good. The score is iconic and memorable. I think there's iconic moments in this. It is a timeless classic, and I think it's perfect for me. It is the perfect summer blockbuster. It flew by.
It's interesting because the flaw that you pointed out earlier in the podcast is actually the one that I can't get over and why I can't give this movie 0 wipes, which is the resolution was sort of anticlimactic and they telegraphed the shit out of it, right? I love this movie. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely loved it. It was nearly flawless, but two things I could not get over. One was a little too many of the shark's flaws were visually apparent late in the game. It was an unforced error. And the other one was the solution to the shark being shoot the tank that it's mysteriously holding in its mouth. Didn't work for me. I did like the ending itself, just not how they disposed of Bruce.
The only thing now that I'm thinking about it, I did have two minor problems, but not enough to affect the score. What was up with those two shooting stars?
Yeah, I had to rewind and make sure that I saw that correctly.
It was a terrible, like, hand-drawn effect on the frames of a shooting star and then the glowing of the buoy at night.
E.T. Spielberg was...
So this is in the same world?
This exists in the same universe. Yeah, it's a Spielberg verse.
I was thinking that Brody joined the force again, moved to L.A., and became a helicopter pilot.
Oh. and he's still looking for them titties.
Yeah, then peeps in the window as people are like doing naked yoga.
It's a half wipe for me. It's 0 wipes for Big D, and it gives us an average wipe score of 1/4 wipe for Jaws.
Gene, with a score of 0.25 wipes, that now ties this in the 6th spot with Jurassic Park, Wayne's World, Grosse Pointe Blank, and Fargo. It is slightly better than Terminator 2 and Fight Club, and slightly worse than Alien, Dumb and Dumber, Back to the Future, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Pulp Fiction. Our group of perfect films. I think this is definitely a top 10 film for me.
Totally agree. I'm with you on that. Well, thanks, Tracy, for the commission. Before we close out, we've got a couple voicemails that we'd like to hit. And our first one comes from Commissioner Riley calling in about Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
Hey, guys, it's Riley calling here. I'm the one who commissioned Mortal Kombat Annihilation. And let me just say, I love the podcast. It was great. But I just thought it was funny that I woke up that morning excited for the podcast. I then open up my Spotify and I read the description and I see her instead of him. And it got a good laugh out of me and my partner. My partner thought it was hysterical. My partner loved it. I just thought, I just wanted to just say, I'm a dude. That's okay, though. Stuff happens, typos and whatever, I'm not, I don't care. I just thought it was really funny. We all thought it was funny here, so we all have fun here up in Canada, But anyway, another thing that I thought of, so you guys did, Austin Powers. And yeah, that was a good podcast again, and you guys were saying a lot about Mike Myers and how he's not that I can't remember if it wasn't that he wasn't great or like he just kind of I think someone made the comment that he could only do like characters like Dr. Evil will, and going back and looking at it, you're absolutely right. Like it was like he could only really do like the big like over the top characters. Like Austin Powers was a little bit more different than like a Dr. Evil, where Dr. Evil was just so like comedic all the time when Austin Powers had serious moments, and it's almost like he can't do the serious as well as he can do the comedy. I don't know, maybe I'm just high right now and I don't know what I'm talking about, but like I did want to make a comment on the Mike Myers thing because I honestly thought because I was a Canadian I liked him a lot because you guys kept saying stuff like, and so I married an axe murderer about how he wasn't he was bad in that movie, and I thought he was good in it. And I kind of, started looking at some of his stuff, and it's like, I think you guys might be onto something. Like, yeah, like he's fine. Like the Austin Powers, like it's like you go back and it's like I think it gets more nostalgia laughs for me than anything. But whatever, man. It's like enjoy the movie, just yeah. So anyway, thanks again, guys. Really appreciated the pod and everything. So yeah, you guys take care. Have a good one, and yeah, have a good one. Bye.
Riley, I appreciate you calling us mid bong rip. If it helps at all, I often get mistaken for a woman in writing. In fact, I hired a new tax preparer this year and was only communicating via email. And he also does Sarah's taxes. He went and told some of his other clients who are friends of Sarah's that she is now a lesbian. I'm glad you, like me, are cool about it, Riley. It's not a big deal.
We almost did it again today. Tracy.
Oh, yeah.
We thought Tracy was female, and then Tracy mentioned that you could see the movie if you were a good boy. So unless her family was saying, hey, be a good boy, and it was a girl, who knows what's going on there? But Gene, I'm turning into like a little detective here. We had a caller a few weeks ago from New Jersey where you could hear a crime being committed. The police were like driving up and down the street. Did you hear birds or chickens or chicks or something in the background there?
Yeah, there's a little bit of chirping there. Yeah. Right.
So he's high in what, a birdhouse? Where was he smoking?
Canada. It's just all of Canada.
Or are we getting punked? Or are people now playing sound effects in the background of the calls to confuse us?
Listen, there's no faking a high Canadian. That part was for real. But no, maybe he was just out big. So there's a thing called outside. And there's a thing called trees. And in those trees, there are birds.
The only way you would get that level of bird activity if this was like a Disney film where Snow White comes out and the trees, you put your arms out, or Jim Carrey and Pet Detective. That was like you were at the zoo.
Well, Riley, write in, call in, let us know if you're raising chicks or what the fuck's going on at your house. We really appreciate it. And thanks for letting us know that we're right about Mike Myers, because we're right about Mike Myers. Next up, we have repeat caller and commissioner Hot Sauce Steve calling in about forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Hey, Shat crew, Hot Sauce Steve calling in once again. It's been a long time.
Hey,
I still listen in from time to time. So I was having a few drinks and watching Spaceballs tonight, and Spaceballs clearly 0.5 to 0 wipes. Perfect movie, close to perfect, if not perfect. Great movie. But yes, Big D is a Mel Brooks hater. I get that most people love Mel Brooks and cherish his movies, but Big D, Mel Brooks is just clearly not for you. Somehow. Don't know how, but yep. Anyways, History of the World Part 2 was took a couple episodes, but it got much better after the first 2 or 3 episodes. Anyways, I messaged Gene on Instagram about, because I was watching Spaceballs, and I just brought up, this is up there with Wayne's World, Dumb and Dumber, and Forgetting Sarah Marshall, and he said something about Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Thanks for paying attention, Steve.
It's one of my all-time favorite movies. I know it's 2008 or around there. So probably too late for you guys, but it is potentially my all-time favorite movie. I don't know if you'll do it because of how far along it is, but if you guys will do a Shat the Movie episode of Forgetting Sarah Marshall, I will absolutely commission that and mark me down for it. But it is many years past your cutoff, so let me know if you'll do it. Otherwise, I completely understand. No issues, and have a great day.
So, Gene, we've expanded our time frame occasionally, and talking in the beginning of this podcast about how far back this is, and this is the equivalent of the 30s to the 80s. I think we got to go more current, because our audience, it's not that they're maybe not listening, they're dying. They're physically becoming invalid. They can't work the controls. That we're getting up there in age. We have to expand.
I just got to replay for you the actual conversation I had with Hot Sauce Steve on Instagram. He said, I'm rewatching Spaceballs. I have no clue how Big D doesn't like this movie. I said, right? He just gets in moods. And he said, well, probably now that everyone gives him a hard time about Mel Brooks. Yup. It's a zero white movie along with Wayne's World, Dumb and Dumber, and Forgetting Sarah Marshall. And my response, Steve, was, yeah, you just slipped that last one in there, didn't you?
No, but I promise I'm going to go back and rewatch it. It is definitely, I gave it 4, and it was a punitive score. I was being petty. I acknowledge it. I'll go back and watch it because I can't laugh at some of the campy jokes in recent films and then get upset about jamming the radar.
Now, you've got a chance of redemption as well because we have Blazing Saddles coming out from 1974, which was actually the biggest movie the year prior to Jaws, was Blazing Saddles, which is crazy to think about, that a Mel Brooks comedy was the #1 movie in the U.S. in 1974. Perhaps that's a shot at redemption to prove that you don't actually hate Jews.
No, and also, Steve, we raved about Mel Brooks. He plays a Nazi scientist in the Muppet movie. We said he was great. Perfect role for him.
Raves is a bit strong.
We're trying to get Steve to listen to it.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
he's absolutely the best. But Steve, I do agree. Forgetting Sarah Marshall has an iconic song that I would often sing with Roger Roper. Old as the ancient sky, I've had these wandering eyes, but you took me by surprise when you let me inside of you. It's one of the greatest songs by Russell Brand. I would do that movie in a second.
Well, thanks for your voicemail, Hot Sauce Steve.
Come on, Gene, give an answer. Would you do it? Would you? Or is that too far?
There's a line for this podcast into 2024, man.
I wouldn't do it today, but I'm just saying.
Maybe it's a special episode. We got that YouTube live thing now.
Yeah, Steve.
Maybe it's a live episode.
Steve, do it. Let's kick this door open. Let's kick this mother open like we're in New Jersey with one of our listeners. Let the police in. Let's make it happen.
And finally, we have one from Jimmy J, who's listening on the road.
Shat the Movies Podcast. What's going on, guys? It's Jimmy J from Horror 365 and Jimmy J Entertainment. I absolutely had to reach out to you, all of you, just to tell you all, thank you. Thank you for the content. Finally, I found a show I can listen to while I'm moving and grooving and shaking and baking out here on the road most of my days. I got a ton of things that I take care of, and it requires me to constantly be in the car, driving around place to place, and I was looking for something to listen to. And, you can only hear so much music every single day. I'm like, let me try to find a good movies podcast, because I'm a movie guy. And you guys rock, man. Seriously, all of you. Thank you very much for this, and I can't wait to continue on, I should say, searching through all your episodes, because, man, I got a lot of catching up to do. I just found you guys, and I'm like, holy smokes, there's thousands. So I got enough content for a while. Thank you all. Thank you all once again. I can't thank you enough. Keep killing it. Appreciate you guys.
I was expecting that Jimmy would say he found us through Roadhouse or one of the early episodes.
Lest my ears deceive me, Jimmy J, he sounds like Jimmy J, the mouthpiece of the Northeast. And if that is the case, then we are in the presence of greatness. I mean, you want to talk about entertainers. This guy, his pizza commercials are out of this world, but he is just a consummate host. And I'm honored to have him listening to the podcast. And yes, he does sound like his favorite movie in the world might be Roadhouse. Just round kick to the face. Lace up sweatpants.
I used to fuck guys like you in prison.
Big D, what do we have coming up next week?
So, Gene, next week we go from one of the most iconic films in Hollywood's history to one of the biggest flops. Dorothy discovers she is back in the land of Oz and finds a yellow brick road is now a pile of rubble, and the Emerald City is in ruins. Discovering that the magical land is now under the control of an evil empire, she sets out to rescue the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Lion with the help of her new friends. And this was commissioned by David D. I have no idea what to expect from this. From the poster, I am not optimistic. This looks straight to video. I'm worried about this. Gene, what can you do? Can you put me at ease?
If ever there were an episode where we needed Ash's help, this would be the one. Because
Why?
I don't know shit about I can't say the title.
What do you think people, the Dorothy, Tin Man, the Lion, what do you think? People don't know it's Return to Oz?
They might not know Return to Oz exists.
Yeah. That's true. Yep, it's a sequel to Wizard of Oz, people. And that's a very different cast. There's like a robot. There's like a cat or something. There's the Tin Man looks like he's steampunk.
Michael Jackson's in it.
I didn't know that.
I'm just kidding.
I was going to say, looks like Skeleton Jack from A Nightmare Before Christmas. We got it's like a pumpkin-headed being. I don't know what it is.
He's very cute. I remember that part.
Have you really seen this?
I have seen it.
Why?
I think it was like in summer camp or something like that.
Wow.
But he's heartstrings will be tugged, big deal. Heartstrings will be tugged.
No. Is Michael Jackson playing Michael Jackson, or is he the pumpkin?
I was making a joke about The Wiz. He's not in this movie.
Oh, now I'm disappointed. I never thought I'd say that.
You think you're disappointed now? Just wait. Anyway, thank you, David, for commissioning the upcoming movie. Thank you, Tracy, the man, for commissioning Jaws. Thank you, Riley, the man, for being a pal. Thank you, Hot Sauce Steven. Thank you, Jimmy J. Thank you to all the commissioners who make this podcast possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. Email us, host@shatthemovies.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or by commissioning your own movie. Find all that information by visiting our website, shatpod.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV. We review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all the information on our website, shatpod.com/TV. Wherever fine podcasts can be found, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by Apple Podcasts, please be sure to leave a 5-star review. It helps the podcast grow. Also, if you haven't checked out our YouTube channel lately, there's some new content with me playing Redfall, with Big D and I hosting a mailbag episode, and more. So get tuned in on YouTube. Subscribe to our Shat the Movies channel for more video content and more interaction. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D and Ash, I'm Gene Lyons. Join us next week for the following movie.
This summer, Walt Disney Pictures presents a motion picture fantasy adventure beyond your fondest imagination. You'll be transported miraculously back to the enchanted land of Oz, that magical kingdom beloved by young and old for generations.
It's just a yellow brick.
No, Bellina, you don't understand. This was the yellow brick road.
You'll share with Dorothy Gale the shock of finding everything mysteriously changed.
What's happened to everybody?
And you'll delight with her discovery of 4 wonderful new friends who band together against a wicked queen and the dreaded Gnome King. This is the Oz you haven't seen before, and this is the Oz you'll want to visit again and again. From Walt Disney Pictures comes a whole new world of entertainment.
Why don't we just fly back to Kansas?
Return to Oz.